How far will you go for your dog? I never thought I'd live in my car for 3 months, but when the landlord suddenly banned pets in our building, I couldn't bring myself to give up Max. He wasn't just any dog. Max was a Great Dane I'd rescued 6 years ago, found tied to a dumpster, just a skinny puppy with matted fur and sad eyes. The vet guessed someone abandoned him when they realized how massive he'd become. Now, 180 pounds, he was my gentle giant who'd gotten me through my father's funeral and my sister's cancer diagnosis. He knew when I needed him most, resting his huge head on my lap whenever I cried. Then came the letter under my door. New building management. No pets policy effective immediately. $2,500 fine for any units found with animals after 30 days. My heart stopped. Breaking my lease would cost everything I'd saved, and finding a place that would take a dog Max's size seemed impossible. Just get rid of him, my coworker suggested, like he was furniture I could leave on the curb. I stopped asking for advice after that. The night before the deadline, I made my choice. I loaded Max and whatever would fit into my 2008 Honda Civic. I left behind my TV, my bookshelf, and most of my clothes, but took his ridiculous oversized dog bed that barely fit in the trunk. That first night in the Walmart parking lot, watching him try to get comfortable in the backseat, I wondered if I'd lost my mind. By morning, with his drool on my shoulder and my legs cramped from sharing the reclined driver's seat, I knew I'd make the same choice again. Living in your car with a Great Dane isn't just inconvenient, it's nearly impossible. My coworkers thought I was staying with my cousin while apartment hunting. Nobody knew I was showering at the gym and eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. I'd drive to different spots each night so security wouldn't notice us. The summer heat meant I couldn't leave Max in the car while I worked. I called in sick so often I nearly lost my job. My savings disappeared as fast as my hope. Then came the moment that changed everything. A cop knocked on my window at 5 a.m. I froze, certain they'd take Max away. My heart pounded as I rolled down the window, Max's huge head peering over my shoulder. But instead, the officer said, "Ma'am, my partner and I noticed you've been sleeping here all week. Everything okay?" I broke down completely, told him everything while Max licked away my tears. The officer listened, then wrote down an address. My sister runs a small rescue. She has a cabin on the property where volunteers sometimes stay. It's not much, but it's better than your car. The cabin turned out to be basically a shed with electricity, but it had a real bed and space for Max to stretch out. The rescue owner, Jenna, didn't pity me. She just handed me a key and said, "Been there." In exchange for staying, I helped with the other dogs on weekends. To everyone's surprise, Max became the unofficial therapy dog for the traumatized rescues. Something about his calm presence soothed even the most anxious dogs. The staff started calling him the healer. For 3 months, I showered in the communal bathroom, saved every penny, and applied for better jobs during lunch breaks. I finally found a tiny house to rent on the outskirts of town. The commute is brutal, an hour each way, but the landlord has a mastiff himself and didn't even blink at Max's size. Yesterday, I officially moved out of the cabin. As I packed our few belongings, Jenna handed me an envelope. Inside was every dollar I'd paid her for utilities, along with a note. "Use this for a fence. Big boys need room to run." When I tried to refuse, she just said, "Pay it forward someday." My parents still think I'm crazy. "You lived in your car for a dog?" they ask, incredulous. But they don't understand that Max isn't just a pet. He's the family member who never abandoned me, who stayed when everyone else left. Would I do it all again? In a heartbeat. Because when you truly love something, the question isn't how far will you go? It's how could I not? I saved my little sister from my mom's new husband, and now my whole family hates me. My sister Emma is only 13, and mom remarried last year to Dave. At first, he seemed nice, buying Emma expensive gifts and taking her shopping, but something felt off. The way he'd watch her eat at family dinners made my skin crawl. When Emma stayed at my apartment last month, I noticed she barely touched her food. She used to love my mac and cheese. It was our special comfort meal since Dad passed away 3 years ago. That's when she broke down crying. Dave had been making comments about her weight, calling her chubby, and hiding snacks from her. He'd even started weighing her every morning before school. Mom didn't believe us when we told her. She said Dave was just trying to help, and that Emma was too sensitive. But I saw the food diary Dave made Emma keep, where he wrote cruel comments in red pen, and how he'd yell if she ate anything unhealthy. He even installed cameras in the kitchen to monitor her. Last week, Emma texted me at 2 a.m. Dave had thrown away her dinner because she got a B+ in math. She hadn't eaten all day. I drove over immediately. When I got there, Dave was screaming about discipline while Mom just stood there. I packed Emma's bags right then. Dave tried to stop us, saying I was overreacting. Now Emma lives with me. Mom keeps calling, saying I'm destroying her marriage. The rest of the family thinks I'm causing drama. But yesterday, Emma ate a whole burger without crying. She's finally smiling again. That's all I need to know. I did the right thing. What made your sweet grandpa snap in front of the entire family? We were at Olive Garden celebrating my daughter's graduation. I'm a single mom who worked 2 jobs to put her through private school, something my ex-sister-in-law's new husband Dave never let me forget. All night, he kept making snide comments about wasting money on fancy schools. I stayed quiet, focusing on my daughter's proud smile. My 75-year-old dad, who raised me to take the high road, hadn't said a word all evening. He just kept stirring his soup, looking down at his bowl. Then Dave stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon. "Since the whole family's here," he smirked, waving an envelope, "I want to announce that thanks to my big promotion, we're paying for Tommy's entire college tuition." He looked straight at me and my daughter. Unlike some people who'll be drowning in student debt, the table went dead silent. My daughter's smile disappeared. That's when my dad slowly reached for his worn leather wallet. Everyone watched, confused. "Dave," he said softly, pulling out a folded lottery ticket. "I've been keeping a little surprise." His hands were shaking slightly. "I won $50,000 last week." Dave's smug smile vanished. Dad wasn't finished. "I'm paying for my granddaughter's college, every penny." He slid the ticket across the table. And unlike some people, his eyes locked with Dave's, "I actually have proof to back up my promises." Dave's face turned scarlet. His proof envelope? Nothing but expired restaurant coupons. Turns out he'd been lying about the promotion. He'd actually been fired 3 weeks ago for stealing office supplies. My foster parents taught me to fake illness for attention, so I faked it in front of the judge and watched them face 15 years. The Hendersons collected sick kids like trophies. They had the whole routine down. Take in foster children with chronic conditions, milk the sympathy, pocket the extra government benefits meant for our medical care. I was their star patient. Type 1 diabetes, severe asthma, anxiety disorder. Perfect for their sob story collection. "Remember, sweetheart," Mrs. Henderson would whisper before every doctor visit. "You're getting worse, not better. Mommy needs those disability checks." She taught me to hyperventilate on command, how to make my blood sugar readings look unstable, hospital. Which symptoms got the most concerned looks from social workers? The training started when I was 8. She'd make me practice in front of the bathroom mirror for hours. Slower breathing, Emma. You need to look like you're dying, not just tired. If I couldn't produce the right wheeze, she'd make me run laps until my lungs actually burned. There, she'd say, as I gasped for real. Remember that feeling? She had a whole medical vocabulary she'd coached me on. Tell them the chest pain is sharp, not dull. Sharp gets you admitted faster. She knew which emergency rooms had the most sympathetic staff, which doctors asked the fewest questions. We'd sit in hospital waiting rooms while she performed for other parents. Poor Emma's been in and out of ICU 12 times this year. We're barely surviving financially. Strangers would slip her 20s. Churches would organize fundraisers. The medical bills were always paid by insurance, but she kept the donations. She had a whole rotation of stories. Sometimes I was an orphan whose parents died in a car crash. Sometimes I was abandoned by drug addicts. The details changed, but the tragedy was always fresh enough to make people reach for their wallets. The grocery store was her favorite hunting ground. She'd park me by the pharmacy, tell me to look pale and shaky. My daughter's diabetic, she'd tell concerned shoppers, and we can't afford her insulin this month. People would literally hand her cash on the spot. She made $300 once from a single Target run. The other kids caught on. Tommy had fake seizures. Sarah's cancer was just strategic makeup, but I was the crown jewel. Mrs. Henderson would brag to her sister on the phone about how much money my conditions brought in. Emma's worth more than the other 3 combined. That diabetes is like winning the lottery. She kept detailed records too. Which symptoms worked best in which neighborhoods? How much each emergency room visit netted in sympathy donations? She had a whole Excel spreadsheet tracking our performances. The medical appointments were the worst part. She'd coach me beforehand on exactly what to say, then sit in the room nodding sympathetically while I lied to doctors who genuinely wanted to help. The seizures are getting worse, I'd say, watching her smile behind the doctor's back. Sometimes I forget whole days. Dr. Martinez, my neurologist, would order expensive tests she knew I didn't need. The insurance covered everything, but she'd tell the billing department we were struggling financially. They'd waive our copays out of pity. She even coached me on how to cry. Not too much, Emma. You want to look brave, not dramatic. Brave gets you more money. Everything changed when I turned 14 and overheard her laughing on the phone. The doctors think Emma's dying, she cackled. This diabetes scam is paying for our vacation to Florida. I found her draft GoFundMe post the next day. Stage 4 diabetes complications. Emma needs experimental treatment we can't afford. There's no such thing as stage 4 diabetes. She was just making stuff up. When CPS finally investigated, I sat in family court and gave the performance of my lifetime, made myself hyperventilate until I collapsed right in front of the judge. As they handcuffed her, Mrs. Henderson screamed, "You ungrateful brat! I taught you how to get sympathy!" "Yeah," I gasped, "and you taught me exactly who deserved it. 20 years total. Best acting lesson I ever got."